started, I just wanted to make sure you guys are all aware of the reloadersnetwork.com, and you guys should sign up. If you're on YouTube and you want to be able to have a better connection with all the different reloaders and YouTube content creators for gun reloading and ammo, this is definitely the place for you. Great information, great resources, and really good connectivity with all the great content creators out there.
Good morning. It's New York City Reloader again. I know it's been a while. I've had my bout with some illness here, and I'm finally really back on my feet 100%, and I figured I'd go ahead and start making some videos. Today I'm going to show some lead casting and talk about what I do with the cast lead bullets that I create. I predominantly create 224 AR-15 style bullets, and I create 30 caliber 155 grain for my 300 blackout and 308. I also powder coat them and I gas check them. So this is the first video in a series of me casting, then powder coating, and then gas checking some bullets that I use commonly to help reduce my costs. And I think the savings that you're going to find is just going to be incredible. I mean, you just can't even say what the difference is in price. And as I cover a little more of that in some of the upcoming videos, you'll see that it makes sense to think about casting.
So I get the supply of lead from various sources. I do buy a lot on Craigslist. This is a printing ingot, essentially a pig. And what this would do is this would be lead that was used to create blocks of lead type for the printing industry and for the newspaper industry. And what I do is I buy these from printers, I buy them on Craigslist, and I find them. The beautiful thing about this is the BHN is greater than 28 BHN, so it's just really, really hard stuff. And I use this to create ingots and to harden up the raw lead that I've got. And so I'm going to go ahead and melt this today and put that in the hopper in my melter. And then I'm going to show some of the cast bullets that I have here. These are the final product. These are on the left 155 grain 30 caliber with really beautiful copper gas checks on them. You can see that they're just gorgeous. And then I also have some 224 AR-15 type bullets, or 22 caliber of course, and they're also powder coated as well as gas checked. So I'm going to start by taking this 20-pound printing ingot that I've got, and I'm gonna go ahead and pop that into my melter. Believe it or not, it will hold the whole thing. I've turned it on and I'm waiting for it to start melting. I'm just gonna hold it up like that. Sorry about the shaky video. It's kind of hard to do this and record at the same time. So I've got one of these 20-pound printing monotype lead bars in my melter, and obviously you can see the temperature here on my thermometer is rising, and once it rises to the temperature for proper melting, I'll go ahead and turn this into ingots. Over here on the left, you can see a bunch of raw lead ingots with a bunch of tinned ones on top. Over here, you see a stack of BHN 18, which is what I use to create all of my 30 caliber and my 223/224 bullets for my AR-15. BHN 18 is great, and that's air cooled. So when I water cool those, they'll be even harder. I'll probably get around 24 once they've been cooled and stabilized. I'll get about 24 BHN, so that's perfect for what my needs are. Over here on this side is all 20-pound ingots that I've converted into 6-pound ingots with my Lee mold, and essentially those big bars over there converted into that, and those are very, very, very hard. And I consider that donor lead. Again, I need to turn that lead into this lead by adding pieces of this lead. And in addition, I probably will have to add some super hard, and I'll talk about utilizing super hard in a moment.
Some of the additional steps that I take is when I'm casting lead and there's a lot of fumes coming off of it, I'll use one of these masks, these breathing masks, with the right filters in it so that I can filter out any of the toxic fumes that are in the air. And again, I do it in a well-ventilated area with a fan blowing on it, blowing out of the house. I wish I had my own workshop like Elvis and a few other people do, where it's separated from the house, but right now with the ventilation that I'm getting and with the fans, none of this is getting inside, so I'm very, very happy with it. And most part, all of my big heavy duty cleaning of my lead, which I'll do another video at a later time, recovering some range lead, I do outside the house on a big old turkey fryer stove. And I'll do that outside in a big cast iron pot. And that'll be a future video that I do, talking about how I get my lead and how I go ahead and convert it into ingots and purify it. All the lead that I'll be working with today has already gone through all those processes because it's been created into these giant lead ingots for the printing industry. It's fairly clean stuff. So I'll get back in a second, and when my pot heats up, we'll go ahead and start the process of casting some of these ingots.
See, my pot is getting hot, and you can see it's been melting. That giant ingot that was, all the way up there is now far more, it's far shorter and far more down into the pot. So in a short while, this will be all molten, and we can then go ahead and draw off any dross that's on the top and go ahead and cast it into some very, very hard ingots.
Another thing, while we're waiting for this lead bar to melt, it's also very important to keep the temperature at the proper setting. If you have the temperature up too high, I usually have mine between 575 and 600 just to melt this bar, and then I'll bring it up to the appropriate temperature. That appropriate temperature is widely varies by different people. I guess the thing I want to make sure is, one, we don't have it hot enough to melt out the important metals that are in there that we want to keep besides the lead, because this is not pure lead, this is a harder lead, which means it has some other alloys in it already. And so we don't want to go ahead and have that come out in our dross. So we'll melt it down, we'll skim off the top, and we'll keep the temperature just above the melting point so we can go ahead and preserve all those alloy materials that are currently in our lead.
My lead ingot is melted, and at the top I've got this cottage cheese-like substance on the top, and that's dross. I'm blowing this, or melting this at a temperature of around 625, 630 degrees, according to both my thermometers. I checked it, and really what we need to do is simply skim this off. So go ahead and skim off this dross here. Okay, get a liquid lead out of that, and then I have a dross bucket here. And for the most part, not a whole lot of dross left, and we'll skim that out. Again, not always easy to do when you're holding a camera and trying to do this work, but we'll do what we can. Here we go. Alright, so another ladle full of dross. I know it's not important metals that are coming off of here now because my temperature is way too low, and so anything that's on there on top is an impurity, and that's why I'm scooping it off here, off my lid. Okay. I'm done with the dross at this point. You can see I have a nice shiny molten lead. A lot of people would go ahead and use some fluxing agent. I know this lead has already been fluxed, and they throw some sawdust on it to keep the lead hot, but my pot does a really good job, so I think we're going to go ahead and start casting. Before I start casting, what I'm going to do is put my ladle down here, and I'm going to drop some lead into it just to see how it's pouring. It's pouring quite nicely because you have this nice glob of lead in my spoon here, and I'm going to let it dry for a moment. As soon as it cools down, which is almost there. Okay, my lead has been cooled, and I'm simply going to turn it upside down, and there you go. So first thing first, so I've got this nice piece of lead here. I'm going to tap it with my ladle on top, and you see that it's fairly hard. If it were lead and I tapped it that hard, it would flatten out. So we know this is a very, very hard alloy. All right, I've picked up that lead with my pliers, and I'm going to go ahead and pop it back into my pot. And now I'm going to go ahead and start casting. So I'm using my Lee molds, and I'm going to go ahead and fill up the ingot mold. I'm going to fill up one side. I'm going to move it over slightly to the left. I'm going to just start letting it cast over and spill over to the other side. Lead is nice and hot, she'll spill right over to the next side. Drain down a little bit. And she'll fill up the next segment. And she'll continue on to the next side. And so on. Lead is nice and fluid too, it's really good. It means somebody did a good job fluxing it and cleaning it. A nice mirrored bar there. And it's going to rock it a little bit, fill in the gaps. We're just making an ingot. It doesn't have to be super perfect, meaning a mirror finish or anything like that. Just needs to be able to put it down here. I'm going to let that cool, and I'm going to go ahead and do the next one. I'm simply going to repeat that process over and over again. I'm going to adjust it so my lead pours a little bit faster. There we go. And again, you're going to get that spill over to the next segment. And there's a spill over to the fourth and final segment. Shake a little bit and make sure I've got a good coverage here. There we go. And so that ingot is finished pouring, and I'm going to let it sit there for a minute. I'm going to stop it from dripping in here too while I'm waiting for it to cool a little bit so I can take it off. If I moved it now, I wouldn't get that beautiful mirror-like finish. Look at how mirror-like that is. My first one, not so much, but this one is pretty good. So as soon as it gets cold, on the top and you can see it start to harden up, I'm going to then take it off and move it to the side. Okay, here you see the two ones I poured so far. This is the first one, and you can see it's not very fluidic like this one. It's very fluidic still, and this one not so much. I'm going to let it cool down a little bit more because I do see here on the left side that it is still a little bit liquid there. So I'm going to let it cool down a little bit, and then we'll pop out some ingots, and then we'll go ahead and continue on our way to make the rest of these ingots. My first ingot is definitely cool enough and cooled down. I'm going to flip it over. And what I do is I tap it with my ladle a few times. You can actually hear it come out when it does. It makes a specific sound. I'm going to slide it over here. And there's my first finished ingot from that giant ingot. I've got something more workable. In a while, I'll take a BHM reading and we'll move forward on that front. Okay, here's my second ingot, and I think it's also, from the look of it, by shaking it, I don't see anything molten in it, but that doesn't mean it's solid all the way through. In fact, it's probably not solid all the way through. So I'm going to turn it over slowly, and we'll pop it there, and we'll give it a nice tap. Still in there. Oh, there's pop. Definitely popped out. Now I've got two finished ingots. They look very, very nice. And we're going to
I've gone ahead and shown you how to cast the first two ingots. I'm going to go ahead, for the sake of Hollywood type magic, and go ahead and cast the rest of them. And then we'll take a review of them afterwards.
Here I have two more ingots that I just filled up. And the molds are full and the lead is cooling. Here I have the two finished ones that I've done already. You can also see that I accidentally spilled some lead.